My daughter didn't know I was still listening when she said I was useless. My name is Colonel Elias Warren. I'm 71 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my entire understanding of my family collapsed because of a phone call that wasn't meant for me. My daughter, Rachel, had called that afternoon with the usual forced cheer. She asked about my blood pressure, commented on the weather, and mentioned she was closing another property deal. We spoke for less than 5 minutes. She said she had to go. I hung up my landline. She didn't. At first, I heard nothing but muffled movement, car doors, wind, footsteps. Then her husband's voice came through clearly. "So what's the plan?" he asked. Rachel didn't lower her voice. "I already checked. If we move fast, the house could sell for over $6 million. Coastal land is exploding right now." My stomach tightened. "And your dad?" her husband said. She laughed, not nervously, casually. "Sunny Fields Care Center. It's cheap, bare minimum. He doesn't need much." "How cheap?" "About $3,000 a month, shared room." I gripped the edge of my kitchen counter. "And the rest?" he pressed. "We clear the cards, maybe finally buy the lake place. Honestly, he's just taking up space. He never built anything real anyway." "Never built anything real." She continued, "He's stuck in the past, always talking about his service like it still matters. People like that should be grateful someone's willing to deal with them." I stood there frozen, listening as my only child calmly discussed disposing of me like unwanted furniture. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the man they believed was powerless had been deliberately invisible for half a century. The Pentagon had been looking for me for 50 years. Rachel believed I was living off a modest pension in Social Security. She thought the house was my only asset. She believed I had no leverage, no voice, no options. She was wrong. And as I stood in that quiet kitchen, staring at a phone my late wife had insisted we keep, I realized something else too. If I did nothing, I wouldn't just lose my home, I'd lose my dignity. But if I acted, everything was about to change. Because what my daughter didn't realize was that the past she mocked was about to show up at my front door with uniforms, flags, and consequences. Rachel didn't always treat me like I was already gone, but the shift didn't happen overnight. It came in moments, small at first, sharp enough to sting, easy to dismiss if you wanted to believe the best. The first moment happened 6 months earlier. She invited me to a networking event at her real estate office, said it would be nice to have family there. I wore my cleanest button-down, 15 years old but neatly pressed, and drove my aging pickup across town. The second I walked in, I saw her expression change. She crossed the room quickly, grabbed my arm, and whispered, "Dad, maybe you should wait outside. These are high-end clients." I had survived artillery fire. I had pulled men out of burning wreckage. But standing there, being hidden like an embarrassment, hurt in a way I hadn't expected. The second moment came during Sunday dinner at her house. Her husband, Mark, was complaining about taxes and people who don't contribute anymore. He joked about retirees voting without consequences. I said I'd supported a school bond because education mattered. Mark laughed. Actually laughed. "No offense," he said, cutting into his steak, "but what would you know about contributing? You've been retired for years." Rachel said nothing. She didn't defend me, didn't even look up. That's when I understood. They didn't see a father anymore. They saw an obstacle. What they didn't see were the numbers, the accounts they never asked about, the pension they assumed was small because my life was. I lived simply because I chose to. Worn shirts, old truck, no flash. The house they wanted, 4,000 square feet on 3 acres near the coast, was worth a fortune. But to me, it was where my wife taught Rachel to cook, where she learned to ride a bike, where I promised her mother I'd always protect our daughter. I had planned to leave everything to Rachel. That plan died on the kitchen floor with an open phone line. Because respect isn't inherited, and love doesn't survive contempt. That night, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in decades. Inside was a thick envelope, documents, citations, letters stamped with seals most people never see. I hadn't needed them before. Now I might. And the next morning, I decided to visit the place my daughter had already chosen as my final address. Sunny Fields Care Center looked worse than I remembered. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The floors were cracked. The air carried a scent no amount of disinfecting could hide. Stale, tired, forgotten. A staff member showed me the basic package. 4 men, 1 television bolted to the wall, thin mattresses, no privacy, no dignity. This is what most families choose, the director said kindly. It's affordable. Affordable. That word followed me home. That afternoon, I made a call I hadn't made in 15 years. Washington, D.C., a number memorized long ago. When the voice on the other end answered, crisp and professional, I said only one thing. This is Colonel Elias Warren. I believe there's something overdue. There was a pause. Then, sir, we've been trying to find you. 2 days later, Rachel showed up unannounced. She brought brochures, charts, smiles sharpened into concern. Dad, we need to talk about your future. She talked about safety, maintenance, responsibility. She framed my independence like negligence. Sunny Fields sat at the center of the table. You'd have friends your age, she said. Care when you need it. And the house? I asked. She hesitated just long enough. Well, obviously it would have to be sold. She was careful, calculated, almost convincing. Almost. What if I'm not ready? I asked. Her irritation flashed before she masked it again. Dad, you're 71. We can't wait forever. After she left, I stared at the brochure. Smiling faces, staged happiness, none of the waiting. That night, the envelope came in the mail. Cream-colored, heavy, official. The Department of Defense. Inside was a letter that would change everything, because the next words I read explained why the Pentagon was about to bring half a century of silence to an end. The letter was brief, precise, devastating in its weight. My service record, classified for 50 years, had been cleared for public release. The citation inside described an action I had never spoken about. A single night, 47 lives, wounds I still felt when the weather changed. At the bottom was a handwritten note from a woman who once outranked fear itself. It's time, she wrote. That evening, she called. Elias, General Margaret Hale said, we'd like to honor you, properly, publicly. I hesitated. Then she added, your family should be there. That settled it. The ceremony was scheduled for the following Saturday. In my front yard. Rachel had no idea. Neither did Mark. They were still planning timelines, guardianship options, sales listings. Meanwhile, military vehicles were already en route. And when my daughter tried to humiliate me one last time, she chose the worst possible audience. The neighborhood barbecue was loud and casual until Rachel arrived with purpose. She brought the conversation to Sunny Fields, to selling the house, to what happens if Dad can't decide. She said it all loudly, publicly. Then Mark said it. If he won't agree, we'll pursue guardianship. Silence fell. Rachel called me a burden. She said my life had produced nothing of value. I stood slowly. You're right, I said. It's time to face reality. And I walked away, straight to my phone. General, I said, let's proceed. Because the following Saturday, reality arrived with flags, uniforms, and witnesses. At dawn, the street filled with vehicles. By mid-morning, my lawn was transformed. Honor guard, media, neighbors. Rachel arrived late. She didn't understand what she was seeing until the general spoke. The words echoed across the yard. Medal of Honor, Presidential Medal of Freedom. 50 years of silence ended in front of cameras and community. Rachel's face drained of color. She finally saw me. But the ceremony wasn't the consequence. It was only the introduction. After the crowd left, Rachel cried. Mark apologized. I listened. Then I handed them copies of my new will. They were no longer beneficiaries. Not because I was angry, because I was clear. You didn't fail because you didn't know, I said. You failed because you thought powerlessness justified cruelty. And when the story hit the papers, the consequences spread further than they ever imagined. The calls came in waves. Veterans, families, strangers, people who had been treated like burdens. Rachel eventually returned, not to demand, but to learn. We rebuilt slowly, carefully, with boundaries. The house will serve veterans after I'm gone. My legacy belongs where respect lives. And my daughter learned something she was never taught in business school. Worth doesn't expire. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family? Share your story in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for part 2 stories like this.